Guys, today's podcast was really special to me. When I met Tammy, she told me things, and the one thing that stuck out to me the most was it's okay to not be okay. Today's podcast is, I don't know. It's really hard for me not to cry. Tammy and what she's been through, and she was able to basically paint a picture and relive her last 12 years in 45 minutes. It is crazy. You'll be on the edge of your seat just like I was. If you watch me in that, I don't lose focus from Tammy for more than 14 seconds throughout the whole thing. You've got to watch this. It's incredible. How long has it been since we've known each other, Tammy?
I think around 3 weeks.
Well, 3 weeks, right?
Yes.
I remember how did I get in contact with you? Oh, I made a post about I want to do a podcast, and I think you got tagged probably 3 or 4 times. Girls with dough, girls with dough, girls with dough. You got to meet Tammy. You got to meet Tammy. And I was like, well, I don't. The best people that I've found in my career, in my lifetime, are the people that others tell each other about. You know, kind of a referral basis, if you will.
Correct.
And so when I saw you get tagged so many times, I was like, I'm just going to go there. And so on a random Saturday or Sunday or whatever it was on a Sunday, I walked in and I just sat at the bar and I got to learning about it. And after talking with you about an hour and hearing your story, I went, Tam, I got to be honest with you. The reason I'm here is because you got tagged so many times in a post, and I'm doing a podcast, and I want you to be on the podcast. And I told you why, and you were like, let's do it. And we've had a lot of trials and tribulations. You've been busy. I've been busy. I've been sick. You've had things going on in your life, right? And everything has been trying to hold us back from doing the podcast today. But here we are today in front of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a room. And it's just the most wonderful thing to finally sit down with you, and I get to help learn your story and tell people how awesome you are. Because when I sat with you that morning and heard your story about Connecticut and your father and the coffee shop, it's just kind of mind-blowing to me. So I appreciate you being here and talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Where are you from?
I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, born and raised right here.
Awesome. And what was your connection to the Connecticut-style pizza? That was because that's the type of pizza you had.
It's Neapolitan style
yeah.
more. A lot of people come in from all over and they give us their point of view on our pizza and what they feel like it's the style of. We hear a lot of people from Connecticut come in and go, oh my God, I've never had this since I left. Or some people compare it to New York style, but I don't feel like it's New York. Ours is more like thin crust and more crispy and not the big oversized.
Sure.
And I love New York style pizza, but I don't feel like ours that way. So we get a lot of feedback, but people tend to love it. So
yeah, when I tried it, I even had to. I was talking to my wife about you for so long that I didn't get you the pizza, hot because it came out and I was still talking to you.
Yes.
And Laura's like, "Where are you at?" And I was talking to this Tammy of the pizza shop, and she has this Connecticut-style pizza, and I was like, "Here it is." And the dough was like, I don't want to say sweet, but it was like a different type of dough that I've never had before. And I was like, "This is really good pizza." And I was like, again, why I want to do this, because I would rather people go get pizza and support who you are rather than just go to any old Domino's, Papa John's, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like you're this unsung hero in Wilmington. Is it River Lights is the area?
River Lights, yes.
What's the address?
204 Arcadian Row, ROW,
Yep.
Suite 204, Wilmington, NC 28412.
Perfect. It'll be on the in the description of the whole video and all that stuff. We'll put it in post edit. But how did you, just for people watching, how did you get a pizza shop, because that was the story that I think is kind of hard to tell in a way, but it's so amazing what you've done and how you got to where you are today, and the trials and the tribulations that you've gone through. Share what you're comfortable with, and if you're not, we can always take it out.
Oh yeah, I'll share it all, but do you want me to start from the very beginning of the whole journey that led me to that?
Oh yeah, I think that's the most important part.
Okay, so in 2010, I lost my husband.
Yeah, it's tough. Take your time. Can I give you something before that? I know a little bit of what you've gone through, and my father gave me this book, and it's called How to Stop the Pain by Dr. James B. Richards. So I got that for you after I met you, because you said something to me one day, or on that day, is it's okay to not be okay. And so you have these shirts that you don't even make profit from. You just do them at cost, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, this lady is amazing. And I cried shortly after we talked, because I went and talked with my father about trauma in my life with my father during Thanksgiving. I had a one-on-one conversation about trauma when I was about 6 years old. And during Thanksgiving, he had 2 copies of this book, and he said, I've been waiting to give this to you. And he gave me 2, but I knew that one was for you. So I want to give you that today. So you can read that later, because I know it's tough to talk about that kind of stuff. And if you want it to just be me in this room, everybody else can read. I just know that it's tough to talk about that kind of stuff. So take as long as you need. It's just, pretend it's just me and you in here.
Oh yeah. So, sorry. So he was murdered, and he was murdered, and I didn't know where he was or what had happened at that time. So he was technically he was missing for 2 years, a little over 2 years. And 6.5 months later, my father committed suicide.
And I know that you had a very strong connection with your father, and it was around, if I remember right, tell me if I'm wrong, it was about coffee.
Yes, very much. Me and my father were very best friends. And so as a little girl, he would make us coffee, and I would be sitting on the couch with my nightgown on early in the morning watching TV. We only had one TV in the house. And he would come and sit in his recliner, and I would look over, and he would go,
Come over
and
here.
I would run over there, and I'd grab it and start drinking it, and it would be all over my face, all over my shirt or nightgown. And my mom would go, you better not be giving her coffee. And he would say, oh, I'm not. And he'd look at me, and I'd hear her coming. And I'd set it down and run and jump back on the couch, and I'd be like this, and coffee everywhere. And she'd come around the corner, and she'd look at me, and she'd go, you didn't give her any? He'd go, no, I have no idea what you're talking about.
How old were you?
Oh gosh, this was probably, as far as I can remember, young, all the way up till I probably was about 10 when she stopped like telling me, you don't need coffee, you know. But she was like, okay, because I would drink it.
What kind of coffee do you like nowadays? Do you like a Colombian bold?
I like a dark roast.
Dark roast.
Colombian dark.
So I just bought, just so you know, I was at a Romanian party last night. And so they are like big into like Europe coffee. And we got some from Germany. And I paid like $100 for 9 packs of it. I want to give you a pack too, because it's like this, it's like this intense bold. And the guy was telling me, he was like, when I lived in Germany, he was like, they would tell me like, it's this very bold coffee, but like we do condensed milk. And he was like telling me like how he does the pour over and let it steep and all that stuff.
Yes.
And I was like blown away by how much this dude knew about coffee. So I was with them last night. I just ordered a pack, and so I want to give him some for Christmas because he loves coffee, and he's like, I can't find good coffee here in America. So I'm going to give him some, but there's a couple packs. I want to give you some because I want to enjoy a cup of coffee with you.
Oh, that would be
so
awesome.
We could do that, yeah.
Yes. Well, my dad used to have the Folgers that you would literally, the little red top one that you would put in the boiling water, like old school. So throughout my life, as I started becoming a teenager, a young adult, we still shared that all the time.
Yeah.
And we would sit over coffee and talk about life, and he would always give me advice. So when he committed suicide, I literally lost my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, and so right after he committed suicide, December 7th, 2010, and then right after that, that following February 2011, I got sick. And I got very ill and did not know what was wrong with me. I went to the doctor and they told me, they were like, oh, you're just depressed. You have PTSD because you've had such a tragic experience with everything that's happened in your life. And
But you knew it was something different.
I did. I knew something was more wrong, and I told them, I said, I don't think this is depression. This is not PTSD. I was like, they were very, sudden, tragic events, but I was like, something's more wrong. And they kept going, no, this is what all that causes, depression does this and it does that. So I left that office that day and they wanted to give me some medication and I wouldn't take it because I was like, this is not that. I know my body well enough. And so fast forward that whole year, I became more ill. And over a 2.5 year time frame, my whole entire life changed. I became extremely ill. Towards the end of that, I became more bedridden.
You were telling me like you would just like have to lay on the ground whenever it hit you.
Absolutely. There were times that my oldest son, he would come home from school and I would literally be passed out face down on the ground. Had no idea how long I had been passed out. Wake up at the hospital. It became so severe I couldn't even hold my own body weight up. I was literally like, I would just like slump over. My son would, he at 13 years old, he became the man of the house. He became my caretaker. Yeah. He was taking care of his siblings. He was playing football for school. He quit football. I begged him not to. He said, I can't focus and worry about what's going on with you. But I will tell you, I was so frustrated because I was like, why is my life so hard?
Yeah.
And like, why? Like,
why are all these things happening to me? What is the true meaning behind this? Is it something deeper than like, you're in your mind, you're like, I did nothing wrong, right?
Absolutely.
And what is the real reason this is happening? That's kind of what happened to me in many times in my life.
Yes, and I will tell you that I've always been a believer of God, and religion is definitely your personal relationship with you hold.
Sure.
And so I still at that time didn't know where my husband was, but I knew him well enough to know he was not on this earth, because if he was, he would be with me.
Sure.
So one morning I got up, and the night before I promised my kids, I said, no matter what, no matter how bad I feel, we're going to go out to dinner, we're going to have a nice evening, because now fast forward, this is literally almost 2.5 years of...
This is like 2015, 2016?
No, 2013.
Got it, okay.
From 2011, yes.
Got it.
And so we start to head out, and I ended up in the hospital instead. And they were sitting in the room, and they were just cold, and I have all these doctors around me, and I'll never forget a nurse walked over, and she said, are you guys okay? And they're like, we're starving because we waited because we were finally going to be able to go out to eat and have a dinner out besides just at home, because we hadn't done anything for like literally about a year and a half. And so they went and got them cold sandwiches and everything and gave it to them. I just remember looking over and thinking, wow, like this is not fair.
Yeah.
So the next morning I get discharged, I'm at home, I take a shower, or take a bath, I should say. I couldn't even stand. I get out and I just sit at the end of my bed and I'm crying and I'm frustrated. And you're not supposed to question God, but I did. And I start getting really angry, and I start saying, God, like, I know I'm not supposed to question you, but I am. Like, and I just started going through my life. Yes, and I started going through my life, and over that course of 2.5 years, my brain condition causes over 151 different symptoms. Wow. And the reason why doctors couldn't ever figure out what was wrong with me, because I was having all 151 different symptoms. So when I would go to different doctors and tell them, yeah, and they would do blood work and they would check everything, and I'd come back and they would go, "You're completely healthy. There is nothing wrong with you." And I'm like, something is so bad wrong. And I would tell the doctors the only way I can describe it is like someone has an injection in me and they're just shooting poison in my body. Yeah. I just felt poisoned all day. I mean, it was just so bad. And so going through all that, so I started telling God, I'm like, I don't know where my husband is. I was like, my father committed suicide. I was like, I'm sick. This is so unfair. I was like, why, God? And I just start really just going hard. Yeah. And I lay down in bed and I'm just crying. And I look over and I had missed a call. And it was the detective that was working my husband's case. And he told me, I'll never call you unless I know something. And I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh. So I picked up the phone and I called him back. And he said, I got a lot to say, but the first thing I have to say, and then I'm going to have to call you back. He said, do you remember what your husband was wearing that night? And I said, you found his body? He said, I can't get in details. Do you? And I said, of course. So I told him. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this? So a lot of more things happened that evening, and I was still waiting. And the next day he finally called me and he started to tell me everything. And he goes, before I tell you this, he said, I need to tell you something, because out of all the years I've been in law enforcement and a detective, I never had an experience like this. I said, okay. He said, so we're not 100% that we've recovered your husband's body, but according to this gentleman that came in, he said he came in and asked for the detective working his case. He had a confession. He goes, as we go in the room, he told me, he said, I just need you to know one thing. I'm only here today because God told me I needed to do this because there was someone questioning their faith. Mm. And as he told me that, I just...
Yeah. There's a moral code that lives within our heart that if you know God, you can't do something without it. You know what I mean? And I've had the same struggles over the last month too, where I had realized I'd been manipulated for so many years. And I went, oh, basically who's been telling me this whole time is my wife. I've been manipulated by certain people. And when that happened, I cut those people out of my life immediately, and I said, never again will I be manipulated. Never again. Right. And never again will my wife be in the back seat, because I was serving other people that were manipulating me, and my wife was supporting me. And so that day at 9:41, I cut that person out of my life. I went straight to the jewelry store, got the biggest rock that I could find, and there was a different story within there. And I went to her school. She's a teacher. And I said, I need to see my wife now. And they said, for what for? I said, I need to remarry her. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, can I please see my wife? And I finally got to see my wife. And she doesn't like to be the center of attention, right? She doesn't like to. So she was cooking me like, she's a teacher. So she has 3 and 4 year olds running around. Right. And she's like, what are you doing? She thought it was flowers or something. Because she knows I'm a sucker for love, right? But I just went up to her and I hit her with the one knee. I didn't practice for it, so it hurt a little bit, you know what I mean? And I hit her with that, and I said, for so long, you've been telling me that I was worth it, and I didn't believe you because I wanted to get it from somebody else. And never again will that happen. You will always be the front seat of my life. And if you say no, the uppercut from this position is going to hurt because I'm on one knee. And so please say yes to marry me again. And I said, I've taken so many moments from you, and I'm never going to take them again from you. And she said yes, and I wept like a child, like a literal child, in her like neck. And she said, take as long as you need. And I kept crying. And after about a minute, she went, I didn't think it was going to take this long. She goes, are you good? And I said, and she's Romanian, so it's like very... They're not emotional. They're very just straight, right. Get it done. So, yes. But she knew I needed time. But she said, take it longer than you need. After a minute, she goes, are you good? And I went, yes, ma'am. She goes, all right, I'll see you at home. And I went, great. And I walked out, and all the kids were like, what does it happen? And all the other teachers were like, and I just walked home, and then I started continue to work on this business because I knew that it was the right thing to do. I knew I was called to do something else. And I had been insurance for so long, and I love insurance. I'm very blessed to learn what I've learned in insurance. I've been mentored by many people, and we've scaled and grow. And the company I work for is, I consider, one of the greatest companies. We're a Fortune 40 company, and they are incredible. But I told them, I have a passion, and my passion is helping people. And that's why I want to help you. I want to help Pop. I want to help Yiddle, Miles, Heather, Cody, anybody that I have the ability to talk to one-on-one and I can help. I'm going to do everything, but I can't do it for them, right? I can only push them. Yeah. And if I push them to do the things that they want to do and they don't want to do it, guess what? That's okay. That's on them. I can only, what is the saying? You can lead a horse to water kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like Yiddle's passion and his ability to songwrite where you can actually hear it is incredible. Miles, I know, is really good at finances, but he's also great at building websites. And it just so happens Pop needs a website built. So he wants to do it. It's his birthday today. And I said, well, come in. Pop and him got talking. He's going to help him build a website. I met Heather from Connecticut. She told me her story the first time I met her. I was like, you need a job? I'll pay you this. I said, but your first part of the job is to figure out payroll so I can pay you because I haven't figured that out yet. And she said, she went, done. And she started writing down notes. And I said, when I met Cody, I'd watched Cody for years. He's the world record holder of chugging kombucha. And I was like, so when I started this, he was the first person I messaged. I said, can you meet for coffee? He said, absolutely. He met me for coffee. I sat down with him. And I said, can I tell you something? He goes, yeah. I said, I think you want to do something in your life. You're just a little lost along the way. He said, you read me like a book, brother. And I said, you just didn't know you were telling your story. I said, I've been watching you. You're very consistent and blah, 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 blah. We got talking for about 30 minutes. And he said, you teach me to talk like that and market like that? He goes, I work for you free. And I said, no, I'll pay you. So I want to pay him. I want to pay Heather. I want to make sure everybody makes money and we grow and earn together. And that is the point of the podcast, is to try to just push people to do their passions, because I get to do it while I get to teach, grow, learn, and I can become profitable from it. And it doesn't make sense to me how it's even real that I'm sitting in this podcast today with all these wonderful people. It's crazy to me. And I hate, this is what my father told me too. My father and I talk about God all the time. My father said, it was very profound, very over Thanksgiving. He goes, I hate religion, but I love God. Does it make sense? Very. I hate the institutionalized of religion, but I love God. Yes. And I went. And that's why I said it's very personal, because I don't have to be in a building to know what I feel in my heart. You got it. And that's why, my relationship is personal. Yeah. And so with that, I just thought that was, again, it was just another moment of my life that, again, my relationship with God just kind of tapped me on my shoulder that day and said, it's time. Be still. Yeah. Literally. So in that moment too, what I realized, that one of the lessons that I took from that whole entire day, I mean, my emotions were all over the place. But then I started thinking, because during the course of my sickness, I used to lay in bed and pray every night, God heal me. God, just let them figure it out. Heal what's wrong with me. And that every night, praying. And then literally, as horrible as it sounds, but then I started shifting my prayers. And then as the sicker I got with no answers, and like I said, every test they did would be negative, then I started looking at my kids, seeing how their entire life altered, their kids taking care of me. Yeah. And so at night,
I literally started asking God just to take me home.
This is where the part of the story where I was like, wow, because the next thing that happens is very powerful. So take a moment.
Yeah.
I know it's
So with that, a couple of things. During that course of that day when my emotions were all over the place and I started really looking back, I then realized at that very moment, because I had a little anger from my dad. And then, I'm so sorry.
it's time. It's all good. Post-it is a beautiful thing.
But then I realized that I was doing just what he had done, but in a different way.
And you didn't want to repeat those things.
No.
So what did you decide to do in honor of his name?
So, well then,
Oh yeah, there's
yeah, there's a little more. So then when I realized what I was doing, and even though it was just through prayer that God took me home, I was like, oh my gosh, like, my dad was very sick, very, very sick, and he was a veteran, and that's why he committed suicide. You know, he couldn't get answers, and he was waiting for the VA to get him an appointment and all that, and he called the VA that morning, and he told them that, you know, he was having thoughts of suicide, and they had started him on a new medication, and he said since that medication got worse, and they said they would try to get him in instead of doing something right then. And I thought, wow, like how the system, you know, fails all of our veterans. But anyways, then I took that moment. I was like, oh my God, I can't give up. I can't surrender. I can't do this. So I started then making appointments that I hadn't made in years. One of them being with my OBGYN. And he had been my only gynecologist since I was 17. So I go get an appointment. I go to him. And prior to that, I would see him once a year, or any doctor, just once a year, because I was healthy. I worked out every day. I ate right, very active. And then all of a sudden, I have a medical record like this thick because I was going to all these doctors trying to figure out. So he walked in the room and he looked at me. He said, he's got my medical record. And he's like, Tammy, like what?
the hell is that?
Yeah, literally. And I started crying. And I said, Dr. Joseph, you know me better than anyone. I said, I'm none of those things. He said, I know this. He said, what are your symptoms? So I started telling him everything. And he said, stay here. He goes, has anyone done an MRI or a CAT scan on you? And I said, no. He said, stay right here. He leaves the room. He comes back. He said, well, it was a few minutes. And he said, I ordered a stat MRI and got it approved. He said, I need you to go to the hospital right now. So my son's sitting out there. My son drives over to the hospital. I do the MRI. We're leaving, and I get a phone call. He says, where are you at? And I said, I'm in the car. We're pulling out of the hospital. He goes, right across the street, there's a neurosurgeon's office there. He says, Dr. Huffman. He goes, I need you to go right over there right away. And I said, what's going on? He said, just go. They're waiting on you. So we get there. I go in. Tell him my name. I sit down, and I'll just never forget when they call me back. I sit down in this room, and I hear the doctor talking. I haven't met him, haven't seen him yet, but I hear him talking, and I hear him talking about someone with their spinal fluid blocked to their brain, and I'm listening to this, and then I hear him, you know, speak the age and white female, and I'm thinking, wow, that person sounds really sick. And then he walks in the room, and he grabs the skull off their little, you know, skull that they have. He grabs it off his desk, and he turns it around. He said, okay, Miss Tillman, this is what we're going to do. He said, I have to go in the back, and he said, we're going to have to remove this part of your skull. And I'm just sitting there like, and I said, I'm sorry. I said, what are we talking about? And then he goes, oh, you don't know? He said, Chiari malformation. And I just remember those two words at that very moment were so powerful to me, because for 2.5 years of my life,
Everybody told you.
that there was nothing wrong with me. Nothing.
You knew it the whole time.
And my entire life changed. Like 2.5 years of my life gone to a sickness, and no one would listen to me. No one. I had literally doctors tell me, why do you keep coming back if you're not going to take your medicine? Obviously, you don't want to feel better. And I told them, because it's not the medicine I need. I need you to find out why I feel this way. I don't need a mask.
I need the root cause.
Exactly. And I just sat there and I said, sir, I was like, no disrespect to you, because obviously you're a very intelligent man. You're a neurosurgeon. I said, but I can't do this surgery here. I said, for 2.5 years of my life, almost every doctor in Wilmington told me everything but that I was sick. And he looked at me and said, well, you definitely should go somewhere because you're a very sick young lady.
Yeah.
And I walked out of there and I was like, oh my gosh, I knew it. I knew it. It was just such an aha moment. So from there, I started my journey trying to find the right neurosurgeon, went to Duke, went to Chapel Hill, the Mayo, ended up at the Cleveland Clinic, and that is where I ended up meeting Dr. Adada, one of the most brilliant neurosurgeons ever. So during the course of my surgery, that I thought would be one, after my first surgery, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And I started having lots of complications that led to more surgeries and more hospital stays. So during the course of all that time, one morning I had just gotten back from the Cleveland Clinic, and that night everybody goes to bed. I end up getting very sick, laying on the floor, couldn't get up.
Right.
My son, and all I kept thinking was, well, soon it'll be morning. Someone has to come down, because I couldn't make it back to my phone. My son come down the stairs and he walked in the room and he sees me laying on the bathroom floor. And he's like, oh my gosh. And I said, son, just help me up and get me to the hospital.
Right.
And so he drives to the hospital. We get there, he goes to get out, and I said, no, you stay here. I was like, you got to get home. You got to get your siblings up. You got to get to school. I said, I'll be home by the time you get out of school. I go in there. They take me in for an MRI. And as I'm literally being taken out of the machine, all of a sudden the tech runs in there and says, put her back. Don't let her up.
Yeah.
And then I knew something more was wrong. So fast forward a couple of hours later, I have some neurosurgeons walk in to tell me that I have a blood clot in the back of my brain that they cannot get to, that's very enlarged. And they said I probably wouldn't make it till the next morning, and said to call my family in. So I remember sitting there, I just start crying and I'm like shaking, and they told me I need to calm down because you can shake those things loose when you're upset. So they give me medication like in my IV right away to calm me down, and all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, well, let me call my family, and I call my sister and everybody, and I told them, I said, hey, bring the family out, I said, but don't tell my kids, don't tell them. So they come in, we're sitting there, and I'm talking to them and just reminding them to be good humans and always be loving and always be forgiving. And I always tell my children, still to this day, I said, be forgiving, because one day you'll need forgiveness. And that's all of us. Every last person will. Yeah. And so I was reminding them of that. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, we've got to go. And I tell everybody bye. And they leave. And during transport, one of the guys that was sitting in there administrating the medicine to me, he looked at me. He said, can I ask you something? I said, sure. He said, are you scared? And I said, I'm not scared to die. I was like, the only thing that I could think of was, oh my God, but have I done everything I wanted to in this life? So I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about me and my kids. And, my dad would always tell me, make memories, make all you can, because that's all you got at the end of the time. Nothing else. Memories. Memories are something no one can take from you.
That's right.
So with that, I always would, I'd pick up my kids on a Friday from school, and we'd have bags packed, and I'd be like, hey, come on, we're going. And then we wouldn't get back till Monday morning and drop them off at school. Sure. So I knew that I had made enough memories with them that even through their life, they would be able always be able
reflect
to,
back
and think
thankful.
about that.
Right.
Yes. And then I kept thinking, and I was like, oh my God, the only thing I wish that I would have done is I wish I would have did something in honor of my dad. And with that, I started thinking about immediately the memories I had with him and the coffee.
Yeah.
And almost every big moment or decision or any in-depth conversation I had with him, we were having coffee. Yeah. And so I was like, man, that's what I should have did. And I immediately said,
that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Well, I immediately said, I was like, God, if you just let me have one more chance at life, I got this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So fast forward like months and months and months of still being sick, more surgeries, hospital stays, very, very ill. Finally, at like the end of that year, they finally released me to get back to work. So I'm also own a bail bonding company. Yep. So I'm at the jail that night. Well, that morning, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I have some people beside me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm so tired. And I said, gosh, I need some coffee. And I was like, oh my God, God. Yeah, I was like, God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. And I started like,
You're
just
right.
like,
yeah, my bad.
Yes. And I literally looked at those people and I said, and by the way, I'm not crazy. By the way, I swear I'm not. I was like, but I can't believe I forgot. Because like in life, we get so wrapped up back in our routine that we sometimes forget our big blessings.
Our missions.
Literally.
What we were given.
Yeah. So that when I got home, I got up at 7 a.m. and jumped on the internet and literally Googled where is the best place to open a coffee shop in Wilmington. And River Lights came up, which is the location I'm at. And I sent over an email right away, and the VP over that development emailed me right back and said, can you come at 9 o'clock this morning?
Sure.
And I was like, absolutely.
Yep.
So I get there, and nothing is built yet. No home in the neighborhood. The building was only half completed. And so I pull up, and he's standing out there, and as soon as I'm walking up, I saw 2 magnolia trees, and magnolias were my dad's favorite tree. So he would always have his recliner, and the magnolia tree was right there, and it's massively huge, and he would always talk about his magnolia flowers and blooms. And so as I'm walking up, I stopped and saw those trees, and I looked at that VP and I said,
this is it.
Yeah. I said, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I said, I know what I'm going to name it. And he literally looked over at me and started laughing. He said, really? Well, what are you going to name it? I said, Magnolia Social Cafe. And he was like, okay, well, let's go talk. So I go in and I tell him what I want to do. And he goes, okay. He said, I think it's a great idea. He said, let me get to the higher ups. So he goes to the higher ups. They love the idea, but they want me to have food.
Yeah.
And I am not a foodie, by the way, at all. So I had never even worked in a restaurant at that time.
Yeah.
And when they came back and told me, I said, you don't want me to do food. I literally eat chicken and rice every day.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, they want food. And I wanted to do pastries, like coffees and pastries, like a very cool vibe.
Social, just kind of, just chill, some books, like a nook or something like that.
Yes. And so they kept pushing that I do food. And I came home and my kids were like, so what are you going to do? I was like, I'm just going to pray about it. So I prayed about it. And then the next morning, I remember I got up and I was like, my whole life has been challenging. It's all about challenges. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so when I told my girlfriends, they were all like, you've lost your mind. You're going to do food. They were like, you don't eat nothing. And I was like, I know.
Figure it out.
Yeah. And I was like, I will. And so I went back and I said, I'll do it. And we started talking more. And I just remember everyone was so like freaked out that I was going to,
It's almost like they were trying to, same thing that's happened to me. It's like so many things are trying to hold you back from doing what you know you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
It's like those, not that your friends are trying to hold you back. It's just they have their own doubts and you're going, no. I'm going to push through my own doubts. I'm going to push through your doubts. I'm going to push through everything because I know I need to do this.
Absolutely.
Right?
And like my father, he used to tell me, you can do anything you want to do. Lots of people say that, but my father made me believe that.
Yeah.
And with making me believe that, I've never been scared of failure.
Right.
ever. If I have only been scared of not starting. As long as I start, if I fail, that only means that I'm going to come back even better.
Right.
You
I'm
know,
a fail forward.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I've always just had that mentality in my life, and everything I do wholeheartedly.
Sure.
So, I feel like the only time you actually really fail is the time that you don't give it your all. That's
Yeah.
it. There is no failure. Like, they're all lessons, and you can better and grow.
What I love about that whole story is you started with the coffee shop and they said, well, we need this. And you went, I'll pray about it. And it's called push, which is pray until something happens, right? And then you prayed about it and you're like, all right, I'm going to open up a shop. All your friends are holding you back. And you're like, let's do pizza. Let's figure it out. And then you start bringing people in. And now, like, you told the story about, like, and if I'm going to remember right, it's like, it just so happened that people that from Connecticut, I think, what was her name? What was her name? The lady that was there that day.
Oh, Miss Chris.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like all these people in your life, but like what's so great about you is you care so much about work-life balance for your team. Even when we were talking today and kind of like just kind of preparing, just kind of relaxing a little bit, you were like, hey, I'm talking with my chef, I'm doing this, that, and the third, I have to do this. And I'm like, whatever you got to do, like,
yes,
it's all good.
Yes.
Because you care so much. And like the restaurant industry is broken. And it's like, how much can we make these people work for how little money? And I know that you pay your people incredible. And I know that you care about how much they're working. You're saying,
absolutely,
go home, we'll figure it out. And you're still the one, even this day, where you're the one doing the dishes. That doesn't matter what you got to do to make sure that your people that are working with you, not your employees, and we talked about that too. It's not your employees, it's the people that work with you, your squad, your team, Same thing. Got Heather and Cody over here. They're the squad, you know. We're small but mighty, right?
Yes.
And we have a text message, and I'm telling them, like, if I'm crazy and I'm texting you and they'll tell you, my text messages, when I start going, it goes ding, 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 and then I'll stop for a long time, and I'm like, I don't want you to respond.
Right.
If you don't want to. But if you do, let's get after it, right? But work when you want to work, because I want you in a creative mode. And when I got to talk to Heather she was asking me about a CRM question. We talked for an hour and a half about all the ideas we had. And she's like, I know what to do. And so she started writing all these questions down. She's like, when we're done the podcast, I'm asking you a ton of questions. I'm like, perfect. And I told her, you're going to start as an executive assistant, but I want you to grow into something much more than that with the company, because I know that I'm going to grow the company. Right. And when I met Cody, I knew that he was like that dude that just like, hey man, can you go get some water? She's like, I'll have it for you. When I was meeting Pop, when I was doing the first podcast with him, I had a book in mind. And I was like, Cody, I forgot the book. He goes, tell me where it's at. I told him, and guess who got the book? Cody. Cody's the man. You know what I mean?
Right.
And having those people around you, like you have at your squad, is what makes it so much easier to do your passion. And
absolutely.
And not only do you, it's your passion, you try to push into their passion.
Yes.
Heather has her passions, Cody has his passions, and I'm like, what are you doing for your passions? I don't want you to work for me forever. Mm-hmm. If you want to, great, let's do something incredible.
Absolutely.
But if you've got your thing, Cody is the world record holder of kombucha chugging, which doesn't even make sense. But he's got kombucha companies literally sending him kombucha in packaged ice and all this stuff. And I'm like, you realize how crazy that is? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, like, you got to build a whole business around this. Like, I hadn't told him this. Cody, sorry for doing this on the spot. Like, I want to help him make his first kombucha. Yeah. And sell his own kombucha, because he's to me, he's the resident expert on kombucha. Anything he tells me about kombucha, I'm like, deal. He told me, hey, you're sick, drink kombucha. I went and bought 5, and I drank them every single day since then. And guess what? I feel better than I have in the last 10 days. He's on to something.
Right.
He's got a passion. I want to fuel that passion. And I know that about you too. You care so much about the people that work with you.
Absolutely.
And that's why I wanted to sit down with you today, because you are awesome.
Thank you.
You have done so many things, and you've been through so much, And I want to teach you the things that I have been blessed to know in the marketing side and the sales side. We talked about the Google reviews and the little card that I had that tapped, and you're like, what is that? And I'm
Right.
like,
Yes.
I'm going to teach your servers how to ask for these things. And those are that to me is it's easy to me, but it's not taught because so many business owners take so long trying to keep the lights on that they don't get to learn about the stuff I've learned. I've just been blessed to do it. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to give that out for free. I'd rather just teach you and anybody that wants to learn how to do these things. I want to teach you how to get a CRM. I want to teach you how to take that data, which was it right? I don't know, data, and put it into the CRM. And then when you have a special and you want to make sure your thing is always busy, that you go, hey, 10% off over the next 5 days if you come in and share this text message. And people will come and they'll book appointments, and it's like, hey, come meet with Tammy, and we can, like, in that little area, that little nook, that I think it's you have a fireplace over there?
Yes, a lounge.
Like, if you have that lounge and it's like, hey, hang with Tammy, and it's like a calendar that's only just yours, we can do that inside the CRM. And so, like, you get to really enjoy and learn about people.
Yes.
And then people will come to your place because your place is incredible. And I'm going to make sure that me, Cody, Heather, whoever is going to go take pictures and, like, make sure people know how awesome your place looks. And I'm going to teach you how to do it, so you don't need anybody else to do it. Like, you know how to do it. You can hire to have people and to grow your social media and get Google reviews and get more people, because if I type in pizza in Wilmington, you know what comes up? Papa John's, Domino's, because they're paying ads. Yeah. And you can fight ads with ads. I can teach you how to do it better. But what I want for you is when someone types in pizza Wilmington, it's going to be Tammy with 3,000 5-star Google reviews because of who you are. And people will say, Tammy, 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 pizza's great. Tammy, 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 pizza's great. Pizza's great. Ambiance, all this stuff, river lights. I want people to go there because to meet you and to meet your team and to see what you've built, because it is incredible.
Yes, and I am so beyond blessed because of my team. Going back to Magnolia, when I decided to do that, the one thing that I've always realized is that the most richest man in the world, he got that way from a thought and a process, but he didn't get that way because of what he solely did. He got that way because of the team that he brought in to help him create his idea.
Was it Richest Man in Babylon? Was that the book? There's a book called Richest Man in Babylon.
I don't know.
I'll buy it for you and give it to you so you can read it.
So that's what I knew very quickly. And that's when I sought out a very, very intelligent chef. And she became my team at Magnolia. And here I am, like, again, never worked in the restaurant industry, but I got right beside her and learned everything. And she told me, she said, wow, she was like, you picked this up just like if you've been doing it your whole life. And I'd be back there every day cooking with her, scrubbing floors, doing whatever. Yes. And we sometimes we think we always have to have this big master plan and know every single bit of it. No, you just got to have the thought of the plan and be prepared for the hard times that would come with it. And then a lot of times you just have to figure things out as you go.
Yep.
And from there, I started immediately thinking, wow, like when I saw how big that neighborhood was going to be, I said, what else could this neighborhood use? And I was like, a pizza place. Who doesn't love pizza? It's like the one place, no matter where you go in the world, you can identify with that food.
Universal,
exactly. Yeah. So I immediately went back to them and said, hey, I want to do a pizza place. And they're like, what? They're like, you want to do a pizza place? You didn't even want to do food. I was like, yeah, but I got it now. I want to do it. So back and forth for a while. And they said yes, signed the lease, but I knew that what building wouldn't be built for a couple of years out. So the building starts to get built finally, and everything's finally undergo. We're able to start pulling permits for construction. I am now in my last year of my lease at Magnolia. And then all of a sudden, one day, we're having an event. I have a tray of food, and I'm coming out the kitchen, and I collapsed. And that's when I found out I had a brain tumor that literally took over this side of my brain. And so I was like, oh my gosh, not again.
Another thing.
Yes. So I didn't want to do surgery right away. I was hoping I didn't have to. And I went and saw my neurosurgeon. And I said, can we just put this off? Like, I'm about to start construction and I need to get it done. And he said, no, if you want to be there for that, then you need to be here for this. So during construction, during COVID, I had to leave and go have brain surgery. And it was very challenging. This surgery was challenging in a whole different way than my first one. And it was
Tough.
very tough.
Well,
and the recovery was tough. So then I come back, and then I was doing okay. And a few months later, I go back for another checkup. And now we're getting close to the end of my lease with Magnolia. And I found out I had another spot. And then I was like, okay, like I have to choose where to put my energy.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest thing I ever did because of why I opened Magnolia. It was so
tough for you to
yes.
move forward.
Yeah. And so I allowed that. I told them I wasn't going to renew my lease. I just needed to focus on Girls with Dough. And that's what I did, especially because of the health issues I was still having. And so I just put all my focus there. And while I've been there and had this amazing team, I started, my dad, again, is the reason why I do so much in my life.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, okay, I did that in honor of him, but how can I still honor him every day and make sure people know about mental health? Because all my employees will tell you, I talk to them very openly about mental health, very openly. When I even interview people, I talk to them about, if you have an off day, if you're here, I'd rather you tell me I just need a day. I need a
No issues.
Yeah,
Go
exactly.
home. Like
Literally.
we'll talk about it later.
Yes. And I've had people, it's just been amazing. I've had so many of my own team have come to me and talked to me about personal things and stuff because I keep a very open platform.
Yep.
And that's just important because we forget that we're all still humans. And we all struggle. And some days it's a little harder than others. And we all have to work. So why not really support one another? Just not supporting coming in and say, hey, I'm here, I'm going to help you out. But how about just saying, are you okay? Yeah. Are you good today?
Yeah.
Why do we not do that more? So I'm so proud of myself on this aspect because of how much I keep it open and how much I openly talk to people about things and let them know all the time that it's okay.
Yeah.
So then I started thinking, I was like, you know what? I can reach people without even saying a word. I have such a great platform here. So I had shirts created that you're talking about. And some of them, there's 4 different ones and they all have different messages on the back.
Yep.
And immediately, as soon as my staff started wearing them, we had a whole box of them, and they're all gone. People bought them all.
Yeah.
And I didn't intend for those to be sold to the public because I was ordering more that we would sell to the public.
Yeah.
But then when people kept asking, I was like, no, sell them. You know what? Go ahead, because how cool is that? Yes, absolutely. No money made off of them.
So how do people, if someone's watching this, how do they get them? Do they need to go to the shop? Can you buy them online?
You can't buy them online yet. My next order hasn't arrived, but a lot of people have just been calling, and a lot of my customers come in and say, have they got here yet?
Yeah.
But I will post on our Facebook.
Okay.
As soon as they come in.
Perfect.
But
I'll make sure people know about your Facebook. I'll make sure they do your Google. And what I want to help you do too is help you figure out a way that people can like drop shipping, essentially, if you've ever heard of that. Essentially to where people can buy the shirts online, where it's sent to them directly.
Oh yeah.
And that way it's like you can do the same thing. You don't have to make profit on it. People can donate if they want to, whatever they want to do. But at minimum, just pay for shipping and handling and the cost of the shirt. And I want to help you do that. I know Miles probably knows how to do that too. So we're going to help you out and make sure you do that. So it's not just people that want to come into the store, but I want people to go to the store to meet you.
Right.
But also if there's a way for people to do it in California, in Connecticut and all that stuff that want that shirt, I want you to be able to reach more people with that shirt, because that when you said that to me, it's okay to not be okay. I had a switch in my life and I went, oh, that's really profound. And I thought about it. And over the last month, I've cried many times, more than I have my entire life. and it was about things that were trauma in my life and things that I had to think about. And I kept saying, you know, it's okay to not be okay.
Absolutely.
It's okay to cry. And that's why, you know, not only are you're a great person, you've got a great message, you've got a great team, but your food is also incredible. Cody went out there and met your son, right? He met your son and tried the food, and he goes, there's not a place in Wilmington I know that has food for less than $10 that is this good. And so it was like a half sub Italian sandwich, I think it was. And he was like, yo, this place is awesome. Tammy's son is awesome. I can't wait to meet Tammy. And then you came in here and you finally met Cody. And you're like, who is Cody?
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's the world record holder. I'm like, this is so crazy, right? And that's the reason I want to do it. So you're awesome. Everybody, if you're watching, go meet Tammy. Go to Girls with Dough. It's going to be in the comments. It's going to be on the screen. Just go support Tammy, because Tammy is the best.
Oh, thank you.
And that's the end of the podcast.